time for us to bring back yet another segment of What If. Now, before I set this up, did you get a chance to see the videos I sent you?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So let me set the stage. Okay. So we do a segment called What If, where we take a situation that happened and just try to see how it would have happened if it didn't happen the way that it did. I know that's a mouthful. But right now, as we speak, Vince McMahon is in the middle of a lawsuit situation with one Miss Janelle Grant. We've talked about it here on the show a few times. It's a slow news situation because it's a court case, right? These things get scheduled whenever the fuck they get scheduled. So we don't know when the next step is going to happen or whatever the case may be. But this case was the essential end almost. There were other women, there were other situations, but this predominant case here pretty much spelled the end of Vince McMahon's career. He went into quote-unquote retirement, sold his stocks. That's what gave them the opportunity to sell WWE. It's now owned by TKO, Endeavor, whatever you want to call them. This case pretty much ended what we know as the career of Vince McMahon. But it's not Vince's first rodeo as it relates to legal cases and women. Way back yonder in the yarns, the time spread all the way back to the late 80s, early 90s, Vince McMahon was caught up in another situation involving a woman. This one was a former employee as well. Although he met her, the relationship started as an employee-employer situation as opposed to Janelle Grant. But this was a situation where Miss Rita Chatterton, who was a referee at the time with WWE, made the claim in 1992. This is important information here. She made the claim in 1992 that she had been raped by Vince McMahon back in 1986. So there was about a 6-year gap between when she claims the incident took place and when she actually made the claim in the accusation. So 6-year difference. When she finally came forward in 1992, she was asked, why did you wait this long? What took, what held you back from saying something even back then? Oh, he's a rich and powerful man. I didn't think anyone believed me. The usual script of how women are treated, not only in business in general, but when it comes to cases like this, especially when it comes to wealthy, older white men, it's a long shot.
Yeah, but did you hear his response when she said that?
Go ahead, say what his response was when she said
the way that it wasn't necessarily. I'm not even not even about his word, but did you hear his tone and shit when he said it? Like he was accusing her of pretty much yo, why didn't you say anything though?
Well, yeah.
Why?
If it's so real, yeah.
But he said but he did it in not in a in a reported way where you're really just trying to get the facts. He did it in a very accusatory. And to be fair,
Geraldo, dude, of course he was looking for the
Geraldo. That was the name. I know he looked familiar, but my point is yes, and I agree with you. Correct, that is TV, and sure, he's going to be a little more tantalizing and shit like that. However, you grew up in that age, and you know that that's the tone of everyone around that time.
Yes.
Not even in the wrestling business, just in the world.
Just in the world, yeah.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, so definitely, listen, we've heard a million stories like that outside of the wrestling business, within the wrestling business, where, look at the Bill Cosby situation. I talked about that very, very early on in the show, about the same deal, where it was all these women and the same conversation. Well, why'd they wait 10, 15, 20, 30 years for some of them to come out and say something? And it's the same general response as far as people in power. We're now in a day and age where the people in power are going to jail left and right for this shit now, so it's a little bit easier of a situation. But that's why this particular case is so interesting with Janelle Grant, because so many people came after Vince and never got the job done. Janelle is sitting in a very different situation. There's a good chance she's got the guy by the short and curlies here. But in our what-if scenario, we're going to go back real quick to not 1992 when she made the accusation. We're going to go back to 1986, when the year that she claims that the whole situation happened. Now, people are going to say, well, did they ever go to court? Because Janelle's going to court. This is going to be litigated by a judge. So they say, well, did Rita go to court? The answer to that is no. There was a preliminary discussion. Things got held up for whatever reason. There were people who pulled back. There was a long, drawn-out process. As a matter of fact, the case itself didn't get resolved until 2023 with an $11 million cash settlement. So this was years and years and years. But also during that time, remember 2023 is when all this shit was hitting the fan with Vince. All of his dirty laundry and skeletons were coming out of the closet. He was handing out money left and right to shut people the fuck up. So Rita came out with her hands at the trough. So I'm not going to hate on her for taking the money, especially after all this time had passed. But let's take it back to 1986. Let's say, what if?
I think the smartest thing she did was take the money.
Yeah.
Because I don't think he was beating the allegations.
In 1986,
he was beating the
allegations. But that's the point. That's the beautiful part about this segment. What if? What if they do go to court? What if she is able to supply sufficient evidence? And what if Vince McMahon does get convicted of rape in 1986?
He doesn't.
Realistically, I know
that's not what you're saying. What if it actually went?
Let's
there?
say
not
that.
Do you think it would
yes, I'm not saying yes.
Okay,
I'm saying yeah. I'm saying what if? What does the landscape really look like if they do go to court? Vince McMahon does get convicted, and now there's no Vince McMahon running the WWE or even in the wrestling business in the late 80s.
He still does. He still runs it and behind the scenes. So even if he does get okay, so in that time, let's say, like you said, he gets convicted, he goes to jail, right? He's still pulling the strings from jail. Today, obviously, it doesn't happen. They wouldn't have allowed that. You have another company that acquired it. They're not going to allow it to happen. And that time, no one's acquiring that shit. And he had the foundations of people that he can remotely control that company. No fucking problem. I don't think he'd have a problem running that company from jail at all.
Yo, you don't think he would have been cut out from the whole situation altogether?
Nope.
But
nope. He had people contacting him. He'd had board meetings from jail.
But that's an interesting point, because a lot of what Vince did back in the day, the relationship with MTV, the sponsorship deals, all that stuff is business related. You really think those same people would have still done business with him from jail?
Yep, because
from a rape conviction?
He's the one. Stop. Bring the affliction down. You know exactly that they would be doing that. In this era, I'm trying to think in this era, and this time we even just said, the atmosphere behind it. Like they would I wouldn't even be surprised if, like, let's say that happened 20, 30 years from now, we'd be getting phone records of people like, oh, they got you, huh? Oh, yeah, she fucking got me. That's all right. I'll be out of here soon. Hey, so what's going on with this storyline? Like, it'd be one of those fucking things. It'd be like a biography of fucking what happened behind bars, Vince behind bars. And they'll just have, like, all the phone calls and shit of him, like, bullshit with his friends. And like, oh, they're not going to get me. They caught you, asshole.
They caught you, asshole.
I'm still fucking this one. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I could definitely see that happen. And everyone yucking and laughing and fucking saying cheers with wine glasses over the phone and shit like that. Definitely, dude. 100%.
Well, I just looked something up because I was curious. And it looks like I may have found something that supports your case. Because in 1992, she says that the rape took place in 86, but she made the accusation in 92. 92 was actually a very important year for our conversation because there was a very important figure arrested and sent to prison in 1992. His name was Mike Tyson. You remember what he was convicted of?
I believe it was rape, was it not?
It was indeed rape. He was convicted of raping 18-year-old Desiree Washington, an old Miss Black America contestant, in a hotel room in 1991. He served 6 years in prison. But he was sentenced to 6 years in prison. He only served 3. It was 1 count of rape plus additional charges of criminal deviant conduct and criminal confinement. He served 3 years out of his 6-year prison sentence. And to your point, while in jail, he was all over the news. They did prison interviews. They went to the jail to put him on TV. They were trying to make, hey, are you staying in shape, Mike?
Losing out the protein.
Yeah.
On a single day. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I guess that kind of supports your case. They didn't really stop fucking with high-profile people just because they were in jail.
And I'll make the argument that Vince is way more big money than Mike Tyson was.
I think he was more business money for people too. Like Mike was a celebrity who drew money.
He was a celebrity, but
Vince was the man who drew.
Yes,
who was a businessman. Exactly.
So although he was a celebrity, Tyson didn't grease people's pockets like Vince does.
That's true. That is also true. So you don't think there's much of a change then? Because there's a piece of history that I do know for a fact, this has been confirmed, the steroids case that Vince McMahon was in. And we talked a little bit about it here when we were going over the McMahon documentary, and when they talked about the case that took place when he was going to jail, or not going to jail, where he was going to court to see if he was going to go to jail. That was in 1994. It was the case United States versus McMahon, and he ended up not going to jail for that. But during that time period, he was pretty nervous about how that case was going to go. And at first it was rumor, but years later it's been confirmed. While he was going through the case, he was still working for WWE and putting together the shows and everything like that. But what he did was he ended up promoting a gentleman by the name of Jerry Jarrett. That's Jeff Jarrett's father, and the eventual co-owner of the original TNA. He brought in Jerry Jarrett because Jerry Jarrett had experience in the territory. He had experience as a booker, as a promoter. And the idea was that if Vince was to go to jail for this case, that Jerry Jarrett was going to run the WWF in his absence. Now, like you said, he's going to get a chance to make phone calls. He's going to get a chance to communicate. He's still going to be doing his thing from behind the walls, but at least he had a figurehead in place just in case. Do you foresee a very similar situation to like that happening in 1986? Do you think because in the original story it didn't go to court, but if it had, if this would have been a situation where he doesn't know the outcome just yet, it's the bare bones beginning, but she's pushing the issue, we're going to court, should I have a backup plan?
He definitely has his ducks in a row.
Okay.
And to be honest with you, I think his ducks are already in a row. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, it's already there. In the time frame of which you are speaking.
Yeah.
And we kind of already know his ducks were in a row with the information, some of the information that we have with this situation that's going on right here.
Yes.
He's had a string of people that are involved in this circus, in these shenanigans. All of those people would have flown under the radar. They would have done their due diligence and kept quiet as much as possible. And if they got Vince, it was fine. They had a business structure in mind right now.
Yeah.
Today, with this shit happening, a lot of those people were already out of the business.
Yep.
And if they weren't, they left shortly after Vince did. So there was no structure there. So yeah, I think not only would he have, I believe he already did. Yes. 100%.
Well, when the Janelle Grant before the Janelle Grant stuff went public, and before we all knew as outsiders about the women and the buyouts, and the bribes and the what was it, 12 million, 20 million or something that he was just handing out from funds, we as observers all thought at the time how weird it was that all of a sudden he was stepping back. Triple H was now going to be in control of the creative. They were making moves. Stephanie all of a sudden was now going to be a member of the board. These were moves that were made before we found out about the shit hitting the fan. So internally, you're right. Like internally, he's not afraid to put it, as you said, put his ducks in a row, make sure everything is on the up and up. The only difference between 86, maybe even 94, if the steroid case goes another way, and even later in the years, when they had the issue with the WWF, with the Wildlife Fund or whatever, and they lost that. That was the one lawsuit that they did win. And excuse me, what did I just say? That was the one lawsuit. I did say it right? That they did not win. I said that right. They did not.
No. You said they did win.
Okay, so let me correct that.
Yes.
No, it was the lawsuit they did not win. That's why we ended up changing to WWE, because they lost that legal battle. Of all the legal battles he's had, for that to be the one time that he lost is fucking crazy.
I'm gonna hold you. There's a part of me that believed that was a throwaway.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
He did it on purpose. Like, he kind of wanted to do it, and it would have been cheaper to do it if he got sued.
Oh, you think he could have won that then?
I feel like it was staged.
The whole thing?
Yeah, I think kind of wanted. I don't know. I forget what I heard that triggered that thought. I was watching something, and then they were like, the WWE, you're sued for this, and something. It's just one of them. You ever had those weird things where, like, something unrelated to what you're not unrelated, but like you get triggered, something triggers in you that you don't know why you did, but something's telling you, and that's what I got. And I'm like, I wonder if he kind of like, like the batter that leans into the pitch.
Yeah.
I wonder if he kind of like did that. I would have to look into what that situation was a little bit more. But when you say it, reminded me of the feeling when I heard that recently, and I'm like, dude, I feel like he wanted that L. He took it on purpose because he wanted to change it to entertainment and not federation.
Oh my god, I don't know.
Something to investigate for later.
Yeah.
But it was
Can we really investigate it? That sounds like something that he would have just thought of in his head. I don't know if there's paperwork or to determine that he wanted to lose a lawsuit specifically for a rebrand, because it says here, I looked it up while you were talking, that the Worldwide Fund the Worldwide Fund for Nature, also known as WWF, had shared the acronym with McMahon's wrestling company since 1979. Remember, the company that Vince bought from his father was not WWF. It was WWWF. It was the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. He changed it later, and I guess when he did that, he ran into a copyright issue, but they came to an agreement in 1979. Then in 94, both parties reached an agreement limiting the wrestling company use of WWF, especially outside North America and in written form. However, McMahon's promotion allegedly violated that agreement, leading to a lawsuit filed by the conservation group, and in 2000, the court ruled in favor of the environmental WWF, forcing them to rebrand in WWE. So I guess that proves your point again. Because they said, yeah, you could use it, but within limits. And as soon as you tell Vince McMahon he has limits, that's the end of that.
I'm telling you, man, it's a weird. I'm not saying I'm right. Listen, all I'm saying is I just got this weird vibe that, like, he was like, it would be cheaper to lose this lawsuit than, I don't know. It's a stupid thought, but it's just a feeling I had. I just brought it up. Anyway, we move on.
Well, you said earlier that, yeah, if something would have happened in 86, he would have had his ducks in a row. And now I have to ask the question, who? Because in 1994, it was Jerry Jarrett, right? And back in those days, in 86, I don't know if it would have been his wife. I don't know. Like, I think, like, in 94, he had a guy, and now, in 2000, whatever, 20, whatever the fuck, he had a guy. Obviously, he had family. In 2000, he had backup. I don't know who that would have been in 86, but
I know for sure, and I don't mean oh my god, I'm gonna say it, but I in no means in any purpose is trying to put smut on his name.
Oh boy.
Because I don't see it as a defending him, although I can't even completely dismiss that. But I definitely see it as a defending the business, and I think someone who would absolutely be cooperating in communication, I would guess in the locker room would be Taker, dude. And even if some of the information was unbeknownst to him, which is why I want to be careful, I'm not trying to put smut on his name, he would definitely do. It would be one of those things where, like, you gotta do what you gotta do for the best of the business, and it'd be one of those things where, like, he knows something's a little off, and they're getting calls to do things that he know Vince would do, but he's not there, so he kind of knows he's pulling straight. You know what I mean? It's like you kind of know what's going on, but you don't know, but you're trying to ignore it because you want to do what's best for business. So that's why I'm trying to put it this way. Not that he'd be like, oh yeah, let's defend the rapist. It's more be like, or we got to protect the company and everything we work for as a wrestler. But I think he would be like I'm trying to shoot some bail here, not make him sound like a terrible person, but he'd be like, involuntarily like forced to be one of those ducks. If that makes any sense.
But
at
you're
all.
saying The Undertaker?
Yes.
Well, The Undertaker wasn't there in '86.
Oh, he wasn't there.
No,
Okay.
he got there in '90.
Okay. Fair
And
enough.
one of the when I posed that question about who do I think, like who
because I always think of him of like the ultimate Vince guy.
Yeah, he still is. He's hanging with Vince right now. Every photo or video I see is still the two of them hanging out. And he said on his own show, he said, "No, I get what's happening. I get the accusations. I get the situation that's going on, but I don't have the life I have without him. I just can't turn. He can't do it. He just can't turn his back on the guy. He can't do it. You know, and he's just, I can't."
I'm not completely wrong there. If Taker was there, then sure. But in that time frame, he wasn't. So I get it.
So I will pose this to the audience because I'm looking. I sent you a link. I put the roster together, or not. I'd put the roster. Some website put the roster together of what that roster looked like in WWE in 1986. And yeah, there's wrestlers here, but there's also non-wrestlers on here. And I'm looking through, and it just dawned on me. And I'm just spitballing here. I could be wrong. I don't know enough about the behind-the-scenes working at that time. But I'm looking at this, and two things poke out. One of which is that one of the individuals that had a percentage of ownership in the company at the time, who was on this list, who, if you ask me, could have maintained the company at least long enough for Vince to come back and take the reins. There's Gorilla Monsoon's on here. And there's another guy here, Jim Barnett, who was a right-hand man of Vince McMahon's at the time. I'm going to go ahead and lean in that direction. I think those guys would have probably had their hands. Again, they had their hands in ownership already as it was. It wasn't like they're being promoted to a position to take care of the company. They were already slightly financially involved in supporting the company. So that would have been a lateral move. But something else stuck out into my head. And I was Googling something while you were talking. And my timeline in my head, because, you know, I got the Rolodex going. I'm trying to put a timestamp on it, and my timestamp was correct. Because this rape case would have been in 1986. One of the most criticized aspects of professional wrestling is that of all the forms of entertainment, and sports for that matter, sports or entertainment, no matter way you look at it, pro wrestling doesn't have a union. It's one of the things that's always been criticized about pro wrestling, that it doesn't have a union. There's no sanctioning body that oversees it in that way. That's non-privatized. And the one individual who tried to get the ball rolling on that and almost succeeded was Jesse the Body Ventura. He was pushing for it. He had a lot of the boys behind him. And they were prepared to form a union to make sure that everybody was taken care of. They've got the insurance. All the shit that unions do. You know, you just got to pay your dues or whatever, and you're a part of the fucking union. Ventura is the one who told the story that Hulk Hogan was the guy that put the kibosh. He broke up the whole union plan because he was afraid that would ruin his position with the company. So he narked. He snitched to Vince. Vince got ahead of it, released Ventura, squashed all conversation concerning unions, and to this day, we've yet to have one. Ventura has told that story 1,000 times now. What eluded me was I was curious what year it was where that became public knowledge, because the only reason Hulk ever admitted to it was in the court of law. Something happened and Hogan was asked on the stand some question and related to the union, and he basically admitted to being the guy who snitched on the whole process. So that's when Ventura basically cut him out of his life. Hello?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, listen. Go ahead.
Oh, I thought something fell. Okay,
No.
So I was wondering when did that happen? I just looked it up. 1986.
Well, damn.
So now I've got to ask the question: if Vince goes through the case and he's convicted, and yeah, we are both admitting he's not going to be out of the business completely. He'll have his hand in something. But let's say Gorilla Monsoon is running the company. Former wrestler. Former well-traveled wrestler. And might be susceptible to the idea of a union. Hogan going to him might have a different response than Hogan going to Vince did. Do you think there's a possibility on the table that we get a union out of this if Vince is out of the picture? Do you think that Jesse would have succeeded?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
Not enough people, you think?
Because my point still stands that Vince would still have pull, and someone, although he wouldn't be there to pull the string to make sure that it doesn't happen, there will be others there. There will be minions there to do the work. I don't know. I mean, that's probably your best bet.
Yeah.
In that scenario, but I think. No, I'm not saying that you underestimate. I'm saying that if you have that thought that this could have been the moment, I think you underestimate the amount of power he would still have, even if he wasn't physically in the building.
Okay, so if he was he still has his hands in things.
He's powerful, dude.
I get it. Especially in the late 80s and early 90s. But he's in our what if scenario. He's been convicted. He's in prison. He's doing his time. He still has his hands in things, as we both readily admit that will probably be the scenario. I don't foresee any scenario outside of death where he would completely remove his hands from WWE. And there might be a few changes here and there in the meantime or in the interim. I think we both agree nothing major would really happen. But here's the deal. It's possible to run the company from where he is. He's got nothing but time to figure out, to write things down, to put things to paper, to flush out ideas, what's next business-wise, what's next creatively, all that stuff. But do you think it's a possibility that company number 2, the rival, the National Wrestling Alliance, do you think it's possible they could have made a stronger run without Vince being in that office every single day?
That one I'll give to you.
Because
that one I'll give to
mathematically speaking, I listen to the Cornette podcast a lot. I've listened to Arn Anderson's. I've listened to all the old school podcasts and all the old school NWA guys who've had this conversation. The NWA had a lot of great years, especially in the 80s. It's kind of a golden era. But based on what I have heard and the research that I have done and the studying and the living of this lifestyle, 86 was a strong fucking year for the NWA. Probably one of their best. You can argue 88, 89, 84 before leading it. Getting to 86 was also a very, very good year for them. Business was booming. Not a lot of hot shotting because everyone's just over. It's Flair. It's Dusty. It's Koloff, it's everybody, it's the Midnight Express, it's the Rock and Roll Express, it's the Fantastics, they're all burning on all cylinders. I got the roster here in front of me, bro. They are fucking loaded at the time with the 80s talent at the time. There's a lot of fucking talent on this fucking thing. And I'm telling you, they were already doing such great business without the WWE, because this is post-WrestleMania. So this is not territory WWF. This is nationwide WWF. They're traveling now, right? They're going major city to major city. 86 is WrestleMania 2. This is where they do the 3-location WrestleMania. They're spread out. They're doing New York, Chicago, LA. They're in Texas. They're in Florida. They're all over the map. NWA is still technically in the Mid-Atlantic territory, but now they're going to Philly and Chicago and Los Angeles, and they're also trying to compete. If Vince is not at the steering wheel as often as he was actually in 86 because he's in jail, I can make a strong argument that without Vince and his risk-taking and his willingness to kind of break traditions and step on toes, that ruthlessness about him, if it's any other person than Vince, they're not going to be as aggressive as Vince. And the Jim Crockett Promotions might be a little further ahead, I think, in the late 80s if Vince is not in the picture. Flair on top. He's got Steamboat. He's got Sting. He's got, oh my God. They're rolling it out. Dusty Rhodes, Barry Windham, Tully Blanchard. They're fucking the Horsemen's on top, the world titles, the tag titles, television, everything's. They got fucking Georgia Television, 605, Saturdays, baby. They're rocking and they're rolling. The only competition that NWA had was WWF. Without Vince in that office every single day, I don't know. I think as hard as Vince would work to keep his company afloat, I think they lose speed.
Yeah, I agree with you. Outside of him, that would be the one thing that could have seen some changes. The only problem, and this is the only information that I have, so if you know more than me, then that's fine. But what I pretty much got from the documentary is that people didn't want to do what Vince did. So if the other people aren't trying to do what Vince did, I think it's inevitable. At some point when Vince gets out, he's going to continue. At some point, even if he did a slow takeover as he was in jail, I still think it's possible because I don't think the other people were being aggressive in the manner of he was being aggressive. So they would be more reactive than they were proactive. And the problem is they would probably be making some way, and it would. My point is they weren't being aggressive enough for Vince to have to react. So all he would have to do was he would have a buffer time to react to stuff because they weren't acting as quickly as they would have needed to keep up with Vince. So Vince didn't need to keep up with them. They were trying to keep up with him, which also led to him being able to conquer people so, I wouldn't say so easily, but it kind of feels like that's the way they said it, that pretty much everyone was innocent and he was just shooting shots at everybody and everyone was just taking hits. And that's why it was so easy to take their talent, and that's why it was so easy to do this, that, and the third. I don't think him being in jail makes the other federations more aggressive to do what he did. I don't think anyone was trying to do what Vince did. So I think because he didn't need to be as reactive, because other people, like for instance today, would be a little bit different because people saw what he did, they see what it can do, so people would try to position themselves the way that he did if he was gone. But in that time frame, I don't know if people are trying to do that. So because of that, there isn't any competition in his vision. So he can still do his vision, and they won't understand his mind. So they'll still try to, even if they try to keep up or counter him, there's still a buffer. With him not being there, he can still get the information and react, is what I'm trying to say. So I don't know. I think this is probably the thing that could happen the most, but I just don't think the people around him were that aggressive as he was in that time. And with him absent, I think they get comfortable in what they're doing.
Yeah, but you know what, though? Around 86, when Vince is doing the simulcast and he's doing all these things around the country, I think it would be hard to resist the temptation of picking up where he left off. Because it would just be, you just look at that and you see the markets. Jim Crockett Promotions was already spreading out. Like I said, they did the Chi-Town Rumble in 89. They were doing the Los Angeles deal. They were flying. They had what was it Jim said? They had the private jet. They were sending talent over across the country and doing this and doing that. But to your point, as far as they were doing that in terms of expanding their audience and trying to get some what they would consider kind of third-party money because it's outside of their usual territory in their area. So that's funding right there. Vince wanted, from the 80s, he wanted a global brand. From the very beginning, that was always the vision, which I don't think that's the vision that everybody else had, to your point. So, I don't know. A lot of things could have happened. But Rita's situation, and I know people listening to this to go, wow, in your situation, you're only worried about what WWE is going to do. What about Rita? If Rita, in our scenario, Rita takes him to court and wins big time. So she's already a winner. She's out of the equation. She won. Whatever it is that she won, she won. And then the bad guy went to jail. We're talking about what's left over from the rest of the stuff. Because for the other stuff, the people who are not involved in this court case, they got to live, which is the same story that we came up with when we were talking about Janelle Grant. You know, people was like, well, we shouldn't even mention Vince, or we shouldn't even mention Janelle Grant. Fine, but WWE isn't going to stop running just because Vince McMahon is in some shit. If anything, I guess an argument is being made that it's become more profitable since he left. Tell that to TKO, because I don't know if you saw, but earlier there's an article going around that TKO is admitting that they hear the concerns from the audience about ticket prices being so high, but we're trying to get out of debt real quick, so let's make this money back and then we'll lower everything. Smart business, but it is what it is. Yeah. So a lot of different ways this could have gone. There's a lot of scenarios that could have played out. If you're listening to this and you got your own little scenario that you think would have played out with Vince McMahon, in our scenario, Vince McMahon's in jail. But what would have happened to WWE? What would have been the situation with that? So let us know.